Hey, Larken Rose here. Time for another random little rant. Again, this is a thing that came up in a discussion between various people. The question of like, well, how do you live free in a statist world, and you know, at what point are you being a sellout and not really being an anarchist if you like use government money, or you have a driver's license, or you have a permit to carry a firearm, or you go along with various programs and obey various laws. Because there are some people who try to say, I'm not going along with any of it. I'm not going to have a driver's license. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And I know some, and they're totally principled and brave, and mostly just inconvenience the hell out of themselves, because they'll get arrested over and over again, and they'll get beat up, and like it's totally principled and valiant and noble to do that and make the monsters show themselves for what they are. Like, I would never criticize that for like there's something bad about that. There's something dangerous about that, which most of the people who do that have already learned the hard way. I'm sure they knew it to begin with. But there's nothing actually wrong with it. However, there's also no obligation to do that. And that's a weird thing that some people do, is you're not a real anarchist unless you disobey everything. That doesn't actually make any sense. It's like saying, if a carjacker comes up to your window and is pointing a gun in your face and you're not armed, you're not really against carjacking unless you refuse and make him blow your head off. Like, no, that doesn't follow. You can give him your keys and step out and still be 100% opposed to carjacking, and also opposed to dying at that moment. So going along with thugs to, like, I have a driver's license and I have a carry permit for a firearm, and I have those so that fascists don't harass me as much and don't rob me as much. It's a defensive measure. It doesn't mean I'm less of an anarchist. Like, I oppose all that crap. I go along with it the same way I would go along with the mafia if they were too hard to resist or evade. Same way I would go along with some other violent thug if I wasn't in a position to resist or avoid them. There is, however, a line, which is basically, it boils down to, you have a right to sacrifice your own freedom for the sake of practicality and self-preservation. Like, I'm going to go along with this thing so I don't get thrown in a cage, or, I'm going to pay taxes so I don't get thrown in a cage, or I'm going to drive, with a license so I don't get thrown in a cage. You have the right to sacrifice your own freedom for the sake of self-preservation and avoiding trouble. Obviously, it's kind of sad if you have to do that, and hooray for the people who don't and just say, nope, I'm not even going to do that, I'm going to resist to the bitter end. Like, good for you, but you don't have an obligation to. You don't have an obligation to be a martyr. However, you do not have the right to sacrifice the freedom of other people to make your life easier. You own yourself. Your own freedom is the only freedom you have the right to compromise on or sacrifice for the sake of practicality. You don't have the right to enslave or victimize somebody else to keep you out of trouble. That does make you a statist. If you advocate that somebody else's freedom be taken, if you force somebody else into a situation where they're going to be oppressed and you made it happen to save your own butt, then you're a statist. That's not okay. You don't have the right to do that. You do have the right to compromise your own freedom, and almost all of us do in one way or another, because we're living in the land of slavery and extortion and authoritarian controls. And, if somebody finds a way to all the way live with avoiding all of that, outstanding. But in general, it's really hard to live a life that way. In the US of A, or in most of the world for that matter. Although, in lots of places of the world, the government tentacles aren't so invasive that it's as difficult as it is here. But, so that's basically the punchline, which is, you have the right to compromise and give in when it comes to your own freedom for the sake of making your own life easier. And you have to decide where to draw that line. How much crap you're going to put up with, and at what point you're saying, yeah, this I'm not going to put up with. This is where I disobey and resist. And everybody has to decide where to draw the line. You know, somebody might decide, I have no line. They can do whatever they want with me and I'll keep complying so they're never mean to me. That would be pretty sad. But it's also, if you go in the other direction, say I'm never doing anything that they tell me to do, just on principle, yeah, that's perfectly principled, but it's really damn tough to live that way. And a lot of people have learned that, like, if your goal is to live as freely as possible, it's actually compromising on a bunch of those stuff on a practical level lets you live more freely. Like, I don't get arrested every 5 seconds because when I drive with the stupid, you know, card that says my holy political masters tell me I'm allowed to drive on their holy roads. And I have another stupid little card that says I'm allowed to carry a concealed firearm in Pennsylvania and a bunch of other states. So that, in one sense, allows me to be more free. Obviously, if I was all the way free, I wouldn't need a friggin' piece of paper saying I had their permission to do anything of the sort. So if the goal is to live as freely as possible, because you can't, like, the way to do that is actually not to disobey actually all the authoritarian stuff and not do anything they say, because often you'll get thrown in a cage, then you're less free. You have the right to do that. You have the right to disobey and resist to whatever level you want. But as far as, like, how free can you live, it's a compromise between, all right, how much of this am I going to resist and how much am I going to put up with, because it'll be a pain in the butt for me if I try to resist it. And that's why, to me, the practical thing of how much you resist or not, I don't bother telling people what to do or not to do. Like, I know some people who all the way say, I'm not going along with any, I'm not getting a permit for anything, I'm not getting a license for anything, I'm not paying any taxes, I'm not going along with any of it. And good for you. That's tough. Most of us don't want to do that. It's really damn dangerous. And then I have people who admit, I'm just all the way a wuss and I pay everything and I do everything and I'm totally a law-abiding taxpayer and it's sort of pathetic, but I'm out there spreading the word. That's the part I care about. The out there spreading the word. Because what you do or don't get away with today or this week or this year is not the determining factor in, you know, what's going to happen to the human society or this particular empire or anything like that. That depends on how many people there are who have given up statism. And that turns around and affects the practical level. Because if there's one or two people saying, I'm going to drive without a license and I'm going to do this and that and the other thing, they get in trouble, they get thrown in jail every other week or whatever. If you get 10 million or 50 million people saying, we're not doing this, we're not paying this tax, we're not obeying this law, we're having these guns whether you say we're allowed to or not, if you try to take them, we'll shoot you, we're driving without a license, we're doing all these things, I'm going to build a deck without asking you first. If you have lots and lots of people who are ready to disobey and resist, suddenly the risk to any one of them goes way down. And that's why that is my focus and that is my emphasis, not how much should you disobey and resist now, rather everything or nothing or something in between, but whatever you do, however much you bow and kiss the ring, because we all do it to some degree, well, almost all of us do it to some degree, including me. However much you do that to keep your own butt out of trouble or to keep your own butt alive, don't stop spreading the word to make more people who, if they get to the point that they realize they vastly outnumber the thugs, can then all disobey and all resist and nothing will happen to them because the empire won't have the resources to do a damn thing about it. So to me, the entire focus should be spreading the idea to more people. And then on an individual basis, you have to decide for yourself how much you want to stick your head out or how much you want to lay low or whatever in between. How much garbage, authoritarian garbage you want to put up with in your daily life to be relatively free enough to be able to make as much of a difference as you can in the world. While we battle the superstition of authoritarianism, because again, the problem is that belief. It's not the current empire, it's not the current crooks, it's not the current cops. Those are all symptoms, those are all effects of the problem. The problem is the belief in the heads of the people that there is actually such a thing as political authority and the right to rule. When that belief goes away, there won't be anything to resist and disobey anymore. It just evaporates. In the meantime, you decide how much you're going to put up with. You decide when you're going to resist, at what point, if ever. And good luck with that. The more you can avoid being robbed and controlled and all that by a bunch of political parasites, the better. But never stop telling the truth.